Motorsport TV Live, brought to you by Motorsport Tickets, the dedicated motorsport experiences provider.
Hello and welcome to Motorsport TV Live. I'm Bryn Lucas. Coming up today, we'll be looking back at the 2021 World Superbike season and in particular the rise of Toprak Razgatlioglu. We'll have insight from motorsport.com's Haydn Cobb and we'll take a quick look at the crowning of a new champion in British Superbikes as well. That's all coming up right here on Motorsport TV Live. The World Superbike calendar for the 2021 season fell victim to cancellations and rescheduling due to the COVID-19 pandemic, just like every other racing series under the sun. With classic rounds such as Phillip Island dropping off the grid and new venues like Navarra being added, it was always going to prove a challenging yet intriguing season. Over the 13 rounds, 2 races were cancelled, meaning 37 were run in total, including Superpole races. Reigning champion Jonathan Rea took 13 wins, but hot on his heels was Turkish sensation Toprak Razgatlioglu. Rea was the man to beat, having dominated the series since 2015 with 6 back-to-back championship titles, something no other rider has done. And he started 2021 in a similar fashion, topping the first 3 rounds. But come round 4 at Silverstone, it was Toprak who took the top spot with 2 race wins and Rea suffering a DNF in race 2. The two could barely be split for the remainder of the season, and by the penultimate round they were separated by only 30 points, and it was Toprak who had the advantage going into the final round. Rea closed the gap by taking the race 1 win in Mandalika. However, with Superpole cancelled due to atrocious weather, Toprak only needed to finish in the points to guarantee the title. The race 2 win was a small consolation for Rea as Toprak's 4th place finish handed him the crown. Well, it wasn't only World Superbikes that ran down to the wire. British Superbikes was also full of drama as the championship came into its final round of the season at Brands Hatch, with Taron McKenzie just 10 points clear at the top. The Scot took the race 1 win on the Saturday to increase his lead over teammate Jason O'Halloran to 22 points, but the championship was far from over, with Christian Idden and Tommy Bridewell also still in the running. On Sunday, as race 2 came to its conclusion, just under 900ths of a second separated the top 2 positions. McKenzie was the man in front, taking 25 points for the win and sealing his championship after a spectacular overtake on the run to the line of the final lap.
Right, there's an opportunity.
Not a big one.
Not.
Here's your last major opportunity. Tommy goes defensive. Will that cost him time going out of the corner?
It will cost him time, but has he got the drive, McKenzie? It looks like Bridewell's got it done, but McKenzie's aiming to the inside. He's going to go wide now, McKenzie, to try and get the drive out of clearways. This is it. We're heading towards the line. He runs up out wide. McKenzie's going to get it done. Tara McKenzie, absolutely outstanding, will win the 32nd Bennett's British Superbike race.
How about that? Incredible scenes. For the win came 25 years after his father Niall McKenzie won the title on a Yamaha. A fairy tale come true for the new champion, who put the icing on a cake with a 3rd win of the weekend, dominating the final round of the season. Well, earlier this week, Autosport.com editor Haydn Cobb popped into the studio to chat to Rachel Downey about all the key Superbike stories from 2021.
Haydn, welcome.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Well, it's great to have you here. First of all, let's have a look at the season, and what a season. Are you surprised that Toprak Razgatlioglu did it? He beat Rea.
It certainly beat the trend that we've seen, obviously, for the last 6 years as Johnny Rea being 6-time World Superbike champion. But in terms of what would predictions say, I guess their pre-season wasn't out of the realms of possibility. Last year, when Toprak Razgatlioglu moved to the factory Yamaha team, he looked to be getting the package and as a rider to fight for the world title, but the adjustment was coming there, and obviously the COVID impacted season made it a tricky one. And then put those pieces together with a year of experience, and all of a sudden he did look a title contender after a couple of rounds, and then suddenly all things changed. So yeah, very impressed with how his season went.
And there's such an intense rivalry, isn't there, between the two of them? And it quite literally did come down to the last race of the season.
That's right. So their story goes back a few years from this season when Toprak Razgatlioglu was coming through the ranks as a Kawasaki rider and was seen as a protege of sorts in terms of the next big thing coming through, and they had a good relationship. And Johnny Ray was good to sort of spend time with him and help him improve his riding, adapting to the Superbike, having come through the junior classes. And that's sort of where this story then broke apart a little bit. They're still good friends off track, they're still friendly with each other. But obviously when Toprak made the move to Yamaha and becoming a rival on a different bike, it changes the dynamic massively. And then of course fighting for the title with each other intensifies that a little bit. And we did see a little bit. It was more, I would say, professional and fierce fighting, fair fighting, say, than in other series where it's got a bit out of hand. But it was fascinating to see that those two come out against each other and see how it went this year.
That's what everyone wants, though, isn't it? We want that on-grid rivalry. We want to see that. We want to see that anger in a way amongst racers.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Scott Redding left Ducati. He's going to BMW. Good season for him.
Yeah, I think he'll look back at the season as what could have been because he was fast and consistent on the whole, aside from a couple of mistakes here or there. But just at the critical times, he did seem to miss a bit of the pace or a bit of the edge to the two at the front. But he was always in the title fight, almost basically to the end. But he just always seemed to have that little bit of gap where he needed basically a race win here or there to really throw himself into the mix. But on his day, he was winning races, was consistent. I think that, as you say about him moving to BMW for next year, that may be key in terms of showing how he felt the Ducati program was going and where the progress was. Because at the time when that bike launched, and obviously it's been incredibly successful, it looked like it was going to be dominating the championship for a number of years, and hasn't quite got there for a number of reasons. And I think maybe Redding has seen that and thought, I need to start again, do a fresh, because he's not had a bad season, but if he wants to be world champion, maybe that's where he's looking.
So do you think BMW is a good fit for him?
Time will tell. As we record,
diplomatically said then.
True, but I think he's only obviously had one. As time of recording, he's only had one test on the bike yet, so it is early days.
Yeah.
I do think it's going to be difficult to replicate the results instantly. I do think there's going to be quite a few rounds, potentially even the first season, of him adapting to the bike, telling the team what he wants from the bike in terms of changes, setup, development parts. Because although BMW have been strong in places, they haven't really ever been, for a number of years at least, a title contender has been at the front consistently, compared to, say, Ducati that he's been on previously, or recent examples, of course, Kawasaki and Yamaha. So I think it will be interesting to watch. It'll be intriguing, one of the great storylines for next year, but it could be a tricky one for him, at least in the early stages.
So who else would you say stood out for you this season?
I mean, the top three, by far and away. I think as the season wore on, Andrea Locatelli had a particularly very strong end to the year. He was obviously stepping up from as World Supersport champion last year to into the bigger bike in World Superbikes. And I think, taking that time to adapt, learning from his teammate and other Yamaha riders how to ride that bike as well. But as things were going on, obviously on a brilliant package, it was getting stronger and stronger. A good word to Garrett Gerloff as well, the American rider. Had a couple of hairy moments, taking out a few people here and there, and didn't make himself the most popular, let's say, as well as sort of what became ultimately a distraction of popping onto the MotoGP grid for a couple of times when Yamaha were shuffling around their riders and having injuries and whatnot. But at times again sparkled, and I think if he has a full year, he could again challenge at the front and be fascinating to see how he goes.
Chaz Davies, one of the most successful racers from the World Superbikes, is retiring. Was that a shock? And also, I find that with this season, a lot of the racers, they're not shy in putting on Instagram how they feel. They're not shy in announcing these things before it's official.
Yes, Chaz is going to be a big sort of loss to the paddock, and one of those that probably wears his heart on his sleeve, perhaps sometimes more than he would like to. But an incredibly talented rider. Was it a shock? I would say A surprise in terms of he would have definitely got opportunities and contracts or to ride both in World Superbikes. But even if he fancied going to the British Superbike Championship, I'm sure there would have been chances for him to continue racing there. But I think, yes, as we've sort of alluded to as well, that he had a pretty big crash and injured himself during the year, which isn't uncommon for racers, sort of inherent danger of the job. But he's got a young family now, and I think being sensible and sort of looking to his own future, I think he made the decision of it takes a lot to very mental and physically put yourself through in any form of motorsport, but for World Superbike it's incredibly brutal, and made the decision, today's the day I need to move on and start the new chapter in his life. And I think everyone respected the decision. I think nobody sort of feels after him. The only thing we sort of miss is him potentially not having that World Superbike Championship to his name, because when he came close he was beaten by Johnny Ray on those couple of years. So I think that's the only thing we sort of miss that we wish we could see, but that's sometimes how it goes.
And this season, obviously, with COVID, there's been a lot of cancellations. There's been a lot of races postponed or cancelled. And sadly, one of those races that was hugely impacted was because of the passing of Dean Berta Vinales, who's Maverick Vinales' cousin. Shocking. But I suppose what's come from that is the conversation of looking after the younger talent, the FIM looking at changing the starting age from 16 to 18. I mean, this has had a huge impact.
It will. It was by far and away the darkest day for that paddock this year, and as terrible and sad it is, it was one of those that almost kept cropping up this year. We had a few others in other championships, and that really, as dreadful as it was, sort of brought home the message, as you say, to the FIM and to organisers Dorna, it's time to make changes and try and improve safety. That's got to be key at all of this. Now, motorsport is inherently dangerous. It's written on every pass that you get when you go into a paddock or involved in it. But there are measures and steps that are now being taken to try and make it as safe as possible. You mentioned there, over the next couple of years, they'll be raising the minimum age entry sort of point to the various championships. They're also going to cap the maximum bikes allowed on the grid. So for example, in the where Vinales was racing, it will now be 32 bikes to sort of basically make sure there aren't a silly amount of number of bikes and raising the possibility of these accidents. And then generally the equipment they use, they're making mandatory the airbag system that's been incredibly successful for riders that have been using it. And they're also going to be using the on-track rider communication tools much better, whereby they can communicate messages on the dashboards of the bike to the riders from race control, and using that in a much more proactive way instead of. So I guess your traditional one would be yellow flag to warn you, but if you were to get a display message, for example, say rider on track, they're going to be much more aware of the dangers that are in front of them. Yes, this is all, should be said, it needs to be ironed out and confirmed, and they'll give them time, and I'm sure tweaks will be made for the most clear and important messages to get across. But these are the steps that are being taken. There's a lot of steps, though, isn't there? It is, and it's definitely the right thing to do. It is a bit sad to see that it took the situations that we've seen with Vinales and others this year for these changes to come in. But the right decisions are being made now to make it safer, and hopefully we won't have any more dark days like that.
No, I agree. We're finally looking at World Superbikes. What have we got to look forward to for 2022? I mean, there's a huge amount. Where do you even begin?
Well, start at the top, of course. It will be defending his title against Johnny Ray. And obviously Johnny will be changing back to his 65 number, which we've not seen for, 6-7 years really. So you fully expect those two to be fighting.
Electric.
As we mentioned earlier. Scott Redding on the BMW will be fascinating to see how he goes and that general program, and just any of the other guys, if they can take the fight to the top two, because like I said, you expect them to be there, but somebody else can grab that opportunity and put up an own title fight. That would be absolutely incredible as well.
I know it's early days, obviously. I mean, testing's barely. What's your? Is it going to be Ray? Top right Razgatlioglu. Are you expecting a surprise?
I would, over the course of the year, in terms of a championship fight, I would expect those to be there. But I would expect people like Alvaro Bautista going back on the Ducati. He had that insane start to his career when he moved there a couple of years back, winning, I think it was sort of 13 races out of 13 to start, and unfortunately his season sort of fell apart after that. But he's a proven package on that bike as a winner, so you think maybe that he can rekindle that success. There could be. We'll have to wait and see, to be honest.
Yeah, well, let's very quickly look at British Superbikes. Taron Mackenzie, amazing.
Yeah, an absolute superstar.
I want to say untouchable, but I don't know if that's...
Not quite. Well, no, it was as always in the British Superbike, had an absolutely fascinating year to watch. Sort of his teammate Jason O'Halloran was leading for the first part of the year, had those sort of wins that was taking him into the showdown format as the favourite. But as is the way, as seen in a few years with this format, it only really counts in those final 3 rounds. And as you say, Taron did it when it counts. Took his opportunities. There was drama basically from every race, right down to him winning it at Brands Hatch. But a brilliant story in terms of him winning it after his father won 3 British Superbike titles many years ago. So that narrative is obviously incredible and very popular. Yeah, and we'll see what happens in the future, but it would be great to see Taron potentially on the world stage. He's got a few wild cards lined up with a very competitive package with Yamaha for next year, as well as defending his British Superbike crown. So how he'll go there, that could be absolutely fascinating as well when he turns up. Maybe he could be the disruptor to the World Superbike.
I mean, that would be amazing. And is that quite a natural transition anyway?
It can be. I guess you would say from national to international competition in any form, that would be the way to go. Lots take different routes, as we've seen over the year. But yeah, talking particularly from the British scene, what has been the very common route is, British Superbikes to World Superbikes. And Taron has made no secret of his desire to make it in World Superbikes, knows the bikes, knows he can be competitive. He's had obviously a few years ago now, but he had a stint in Moto 2, albeit not the greatest package, but he's given it a go there and perhaps felt he needs to show himself on the world stage still, but in a different light, and maybe that's where his future lies. But we'll see. As long as he keeps winning races, people can't ignore him. That's the
true.
Thing.
That's a very true word, and what a brilliant note to end on. Thank you very much, Haydn, for talking to me today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Great stuff. Well, that's all we've got time for. Thanks to Haydn and to Rachel there. I'm Bryn Lucas. Join us again here on Motorsport TV Live for more season reviews and roundups. See you soon.